position on changing the Route 81 corridor in Syracuse?
I think we need a highway bill, a 5-year highway bill, and then you can probably talk about that. That isn't something, we've gotten involved a little bit, and I think the ideas are just coming in. There's so much concern about taking down that and routing it around the system. I just don't have enough information. I don't know, maybe Don Miller might know more about it.
I think there's a public meeting. The question is, how much money has been loaned from the Social Security and Medicare funds, and why hasn't the taxpayers been aware of this, and why are the senior citizens being blamed for these funds heading for bankruptcy?
If a company ever raided their retirement trust like the government did with Social Security, they'd be in jail. And I don't think that anyone's blaming the seniors per se, but I think that all of the tension and all of the concern falls on the shoulders of seniors because they depend on it and they've paid into it. It goes back to where we started this conversation. When Medicare and Social Security were started, things were different. People weren't living as long. Healthcare wasn't as expensive. We've just, things have just changed. And they were started with the most well-intentioned. But the reality of it is things have changed. And we've got to somehow talk about, and I don't mean for seniors, I mean for those we talked about in the budget coming out of the House, those who are 54 and younger, those who have an opportunity to change the way they do business. But I think that as a government, we have a moral responsibility to our seniors to make sure that they have the Social Security and they have Medicare and they have the services they've paid into and they are expecting to receive. And that's why something like that upsets me so much, because that's not helpful. That's inaccurate, and it concerns me greatly. But I think we have to have a discussion about it. So those who have time, those who are younger, who are in their 30s or 20s, their 30s, their 40s, can maybe talk about different options.
Why don't we put a lot?
Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid. Yes, our debt goes from 16 trillion up to somewhere over 60 trillion. And that goes back to that whole thing about being weakened as a nation. Right now the Fed continues to print money, and the Fed is keeping interest low. And so everything's sort of okay. But all it would take is a bump up 0.5%, and then that becomes a real issue. So I agree with you. Right now, Social Security is a pass-through. The money coming in out of paychecks for Social Security is going right out to be paid for Social Security benefits. That's a precarious position to have Social Security, and that's because just what you're saying, that trust fund was raided and that money was used.
Something just for the last administration. This goes back 30, 40, 50 years. President Obama in the last few years has passed some really bad executive orders. I am not seeing anyone fight that or question any of these executive orders that are being written. And they only were not written between Obama. Bush wrote some very bad ones for the American people. Bill Clinton had a great hand in this. We can go back to H.W. Why is no one in D.C. taking that 45-day period and fighting these executive orders that are being passed on the American people? President the right to oversee our air, our water, our food supply, our transportation. Bill Clinton wrote one where he has the right to take our automobiles, our trucks, our cars, and our airplanes from us. A lot of these executive orders are ending up in the bills that Congress is passing. And we, the American people, are the ones with the power. We control. We lend it off to our communities, then we lend it off to our county, then we lend it off to our state, and the least people to have the power in this country is the federal government.
And the concern that this administration and others administrations, as you say, what they can't accomplish legislatively goes through regulatory and executive orders and backdoors the process. Matthew is here, and you can provide him with a list and we'll provide you. I think that oversight and government reform has taken up a number of the executive orders, certainly the HHS rule, but there's a whole lot of other issues that we've taken up and getting the agencies in and whoever the order was relevant to, having them in and talking to them and trying to flesh out the issues. But you're right, and it goes back to what we started this conversation with. It's going to be up to the American people to speak loud and clearly that Washington is broken. They've lost a sense of who really has the power. For those of us who believe that the Declaration of Independence, that we are endowed by our Creator, and that we have the power as American people, and that the only function of the government is to protect our rights, not to grant our rights. That's really the whole, we've got the tail wagging the dog, and as Joanne so accurately pointed out, this has been a slow progression. And that's what 2012 is going to be about. The elections in 2012 are going to be about two very different visions for the United States of America.
What bills have...
For the ideal America.
1776.
That's a great question. Where is Bern, New York?
Excuse me, it's outside of Albany, New York. It's in the west part of the county.
Oh, it's nice of you to be here. Who are you with?
I'm a student at Syracuse University in the Newhouse School of Communications.
Oh, great. I had a daughter who graduated from there. And the dean from Syracuse University in Newhouse probably wrote the best article ever written in the Post. Just kidding. I digress. My vision for the United States of America is one where the Constitution prevails, that we go back to the understanding that where our rights come from and what the legitimate role of government is. And we have gotten that sometimes you wonder, but for the spirit of the American people and their love for freedom and their appreciation for what this nation is and what this nation is about, you wonder sometimes if you can unroll what has happened. But Ronald Reagan was an optimist and I'm an optimist. I think we all understand that what we want to hand off to our kids and our grandkids, and it's the reason I ran, is a better country, a freer country, a country where our rights are protected. I want you to think for a minute about if you're going to do something, whatever you're going to do. You're going to put something in your yard, you want to change the window in your business, you name it. You make a decision regarding health care. If you can just think of one thing where the government isn't involved. I mean, it's been pervasive. You know, you talk about EPA, I talk to my farmers, the burdens and the obstacles and the regulations that they have put in front of them over and over and over again. And it's all well-intentioned, I would say. Some would argue with me. Some of it seems to be more in your face than others, but for the most part, I think it's a beneficence. Government wants to take care of us, they want us to be safe, they want to be helpful. But what they've created is a very dangerous situation where in their beneficence, they've lost, the American people are lost in that, and the government is way bigger than it should be. And I want to talk just a minute because we've touched on entitlements, and this is, you know, I talked about some programs, and this is a very, I think, a difficult issue. But I think one of the biggest mistakes our government does, or makes, is our entitlement programs. We have 50% of the American people who are not paying taxes. We have created, now let me preface this, lest you take this out of context, Mr. Media. Everyone knows the country needs a safety net because there will always be people who need help. They may need temporary help, they may need permanent help. They may need, you know, whatever, whether it's food stamps or help with their heating their home, or there will always be people, whether it's a mental disability or a drug, something, they'll need help. No one is saying that that safety net shouldn't exist in this country. It's a moral responsibility. But what we've created is we've gone so far beyond that now that we have created a group of people who I think we're doing a disservice to. I think we're holding down people. And we're saying the best that you can do because maybe your mother was a drug addict or your father's in jail, the best that you can ever do is hope for welfare and food stamps. And that's not the United States of America, and it goes back to my question from the gentleman from Syracuse University. Our goal in this country should make everyone feel like they have a shot at the American dream. That they can, if they work hard, if they have a dream, a little seed in their head, they can try it, they might fail, but then they pick themselves up, and we've got encouragement, we've got a government with policies that encourage that sacrifice and that risk, and they try again. You talk to any of the small business people, you talk to people, the fellow I just saw this morning who's been running restaurants for 40 years. There's good times, there's bad times, there's an awful lot of hard work, but that's the American dream. That's why my grandparents came here from Italy. They came here not speaking English, not with a credit card, not with any money, not even knowing where they were going to live. But something in here said, in the United States of America, there's opportunity nowhere else in the world. And that should be the country that we have. A country that people feel and believe that that opportunity still exists. And we're slowly but surely, with the debt, with our policies, with our regulations, with executive orders, we're diminishing the American spirit. And that's the danger in all of this. And it's why we've got to really work hard as Americans to unroll what's going on here in this country.
I'd like to ask it.
Yeah, I would.
Okay, would you like your slip?
No, I have it here.
Okay.
Do I need the mic? Yep.
Yeah, Congressman or woman, I gotta be honest, I'm one of those people that don't agree with probably most of what you support, but I'm glad you're here and at least willing to hear us. And I want you to respond to a couple of things I read, and the one in the Washington Post, and one from the Georgetown faculty about the Ryan budget. The Georgetown faculty criticized it by saying it's a budget plan that disseminates food programs for struggling families, radically weakens protections for the elderly and sick, and gives more tax breaks to the wealthiest few. Similarly, the Washington Post, in an article earlier, I guess it was last year, it says that the Ryan budget, in regards to the Ryan budget, nothing justifies spending nearly $500 or $700 billion to extend tax cuts on the wealthiest Americans while cutting even more, $711 billion of health care for the poorest. And note that the Ryan budget calls for 35% or reduction of the marginal tax rate from the highest from 35 to 25%. And I don't know if it does anything about the 15%, the loophole for hedge fund managers. No. But I guess I'd like you to respond to those comments and how you continue to justify your support for the Ryan budget.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of what you're talking about the Ryan budget and about the proposal. I think that when you look at the sources for that information, I think it gets back to a piece of paper like this. I mean, we need facts. And with all due respect, because the Washington Post is here and I want to make a good impression on him. Where is he? I don't want to.
He's hiding.
Oh, there he is, right there. We do have the Washington Post here. I think we've got to look at, are those facts? And what is the purpose of the Ryan budget? And it goes back to my conversation about entitlements and about making sure people have what they need, but at the same time striking a balance between fiscal responsibility and creating entitlements. And I personally think that we are better off as a government to get out of the way and to create opportunities for Americans than we are to just hand them out stuff. And I've said this since I started running. The role of the federal government should be to create an environment where Americans can thrive, where they can run a successful business, where they can raise their family without interference or intrusion. And that kind of rhetoric with regards to the cutting of health care to the poor, what he's suggesting is block grants for Medicaid to the states. He's doing what Joanne in the back said. We got to get less federal government